Happy Thursday, everybody. Welcome to the Sean O'Connell Show. We got a fun one lined up for you today. I say that every day. Today, it's slightly more true than most days. Sean Mooney, Utah basketball insider, color analyst on the Utah radio broadcasts. He's going to join us in half an hour. The Craig Smith Coaches Show is tonight as well, right here on these airwaves, live from Slackwater, 684 West, 500 South here in Salt Lake City. If you're looking to make some evening plans, why not go check out Slackwater, sit down, hear Bill and Coach Smith. In our noon hour, at noon, Mark Harlan, Utah Athletic Director, is going to join us here in studio. And I'm going to try to keep him for the entire hour. I don't know. He's probably a busy man. He probably has plans. I'm going to lock the door behind him. I'm going to stand in front of the door. I'm going to box him out. I'm going to be doing the shuffle step. I'm going to pretend I'm an offensive tackle. And we're going to get as much time out of Mark Harlan as we can. He's been very gracious and willing to come down and catch up on a lot of things. So we'll be digging up old stuff because it's been a while since we had a deep conversation with Mark Harlan. We'll talk about the landscape changing in college sports and how Utah is staying on the crest of that wave. And we're just getting into everything.
And you can watch that all on YouTube. You trying to lock Mark Harlan into the studio. We'll have the cameras pointed at you the whole time.
Do you know any of those people that they just don't know how to end a conversation? Like a friend
I'm
or a
sometimes that way.
Or a relative.
I say so all the time. You probably noticed.
I didn't notice.
You're probably gonna notice now.
Great.
This is a cool thing. So, and then walk away awkwardly.
You know what's funny? My older brother does that.
Yeah, I don't know why it's become a thing that I don't plan on doing. But now it's like How I Met Your Mother fan.
No.
Okay. Well,
I've never watched even 5 minutes of that show.
It's pretty great.
Okay.
The ending is not as good as the last season. Is not as good as the other seasons, but anyway,
Okay.
It's pretty funny, clever dialogue. But there's an episode where they have shattered glass sound effect, and it's about those kind of things. I never noticed these weird, annoying things about you, but now you brought this up, or someone else brought it up to me, and now, even though I never noticed it before, that's the only thing I see now.
Well, I'm gonna put Mark Harlan in that situation today, where he's gonna be like, "Gosh, OC doesn't know how to end a conversation." Because I'm just gonna wait, one more thing. What last thing before? No, this will be the last thing before I let you go. I'm just gonna keep doing it. I'm just gonna keep dragging it out. I'm just gonna just extend.
I'm gonna get some shattered glass sound effects ready too.
Go for it. It's funny you say that about yet another television show that a lot of people think is great. That the ending is so unsatisfactory.
Yeah. I mean, listen, it's not that it's one that's like, oh man, that ruins the rest of the show, but it's certainly, they drag out a wedding at the end. A whole weekend is one season, while the rest of the show is like a whole year is one season. So it's strange.
Here's the thing about ending stuff, and actually, this is so funny. This is not how I plan to get into this, but. Look at the top of our notes.
We're talking about endings at the start of our show.
Look at the top of our notes. It's like it's this whole prospect that in sports, and we talked about this earlier in the year, or I guess late in 2024. The most common result for anybody legacy-wise in sport is you either die a hero or you live long enough to be the villain. And that is also true of epic television series, beloved comedies, etc. Nobody liked the Seinfeld ending, right?
True.
That was so panned that they even made fun of it in the Curb Your Enthusiasm finale.
Yeah.
They laughed at themselves about it. Game of Thrones, everybody hated the way the Game of Thrones wrapped up. That final season felt so incredibly rushed.
See, there's a hit show that you're gonna look at me weird for not having seen Game of Thrones. Just like that's one that
Dude,
I'm like,
I can't do that to people because I've never seen Breaking Bad.
Yeah, that's another one.
I never watched The Walking Dead. I never watched Lost. I never watched a bunch. I never.
There's so many nowadays.
Yeah.
You're gonna miss some.
You got to miss
sure.
the nowadays thing I don't feel bad about missing. Some of the ones that like everybody got into back in the day, Prison Break and Lost, and some of these before we all had streaming services.
Yeah.
Like I missed out on a lot of those, and I was just like, sorry, I guess I was doing stuff. I don't know, but it's funny that you say, another favorite show that you're just like, but how did it end? I actually think that now the best way to do it, if you're a beloved show, is to just not film that final season. To just leave everybody wanting
break.
More.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Just like, oh my gosh, I can't wait to see how everything is resolved. You got to realize as a creator of a show, you got to realize as a player, you got to realize as a coach, you got to realize as a GM that you're actually not going to be able to satisfy everything with the loose ends being tied up.
Yeah.
There's always going to be something that they want answered that you don't answer at all, or you don't answer in the correct way, or you don't put the right bow on that gift for them. So I think if I were a showrunner, which I'm not, I guess I'm a showrunner on this show. Like, James, this is what we're gonna do. We're gonna build the ratings up on this show. We're gonna go on like a 9-year run, and then everyone's just like, man, I can't wait to see what season 10 of the Sean O'Connell Show is. I'm just gonna like disappear to Hawaii, and you're gonna have to come on the air and apologize.
You're just gonna do. You might send like a 2-word tweet that says I'm done.
Like.
That's all.
That's the right way to do it now. Leave them wanting more.
Yeah.
You either die the hero, in that case you're dying the hero, or you live long enough to see yourself become the villain. When you try to do it a certain way, then the more likely outcome is that people are just going to be like, what? You can't have The Office with no Michael Scott. Why did they do that?
Right.
And that was like they pulled in big time A-list, like #1 comedy. They pulled in Will Ferrell.
Yeah.
And people are still like, nah, I don't like this.
Steve Carell is way better.
The Sopranos ending, people are just like, is that the way that I really wanted to see that thing end? It doesn't matter how you do it. I get it. The Game of Thrones one was not ideal. Was it still entertaining? Absolutely it was. If you just stopped pretending that you were invested emotionally in the outcomes of the Westerosi civilization, then you could have just sat back and be like, everything except for the zombie mountain, that was pretty good. That probably means nothing to you because you haven't watched the show.
No, it doesn't, unfortunately. But
fine.
But yeah, it's the other thing I was going to say to that is there's also the shows that try their best to tie up all the loose ends, and they don't do it in a way that people abhor, like Seinfeld or a lot of people with How I Met Your Mother, Game of Thrones. But then it looks cheesy and canned. So even if you do it, quote unquote, the right way, it still looks and feels like this is too choreographed. Whatever. These people who we're supposed to see as real people living their lives, they look like they're ending a TV show. So I don't know if you can win. So you're probably right. Just clean break when no one expects it.
And I understand no one can do that because money, right?
Right.
Because everyone wants the money that comes with the final season and that comes with the spin-off and all that stuff. But
if a studio's going to keep you around, or some production company's going to keep you around, or a radio station keep you around, you're not going to, like, why would you say no to that? I don't want any more money, thank you.
It's why you need real artists to be doing the entertainment version of stuff. I'm not the biggest Quentin Tarantino fan on the planet, okay? Like, I probably like 3 of his movies. But Quentin Tarantino has been very clear and very public about the fact that he intends to make 10 movies, and that is it. And he's going to walk away after that. He has all the money. He has all the notoriety. He has all the fame. And that's an example of leave them wanting more.
Yeah.
Barry Sanders left everybody wanting more, right? Calvin Johnson. Maybe it's just Detroit Lions do this. Calvin Johnson walked away after 8 seasons, and he was elite. Leaves everybody wanting more. Our guy Eric Weddle left people wanting more. He had the fairy tale ending where he was able to come back for that Super Bowl run, but he left people wanting more. When it's better to be done with the game before the game is done with you. And there are a lot of people right now, people that we are invested in, we've watched for their entire careers, that are taking this risk, this How I Met Your Mother risk, this Game of Thrones risk that you're talking about. And instead of walking away and leaving everybody wanting more, they're milking it to the last drop. And I totally understand why. I'm not telling them they're wrong for doing so, but if you can make the choice, and most of them can, you have to very seriously evaluate, Aaron Rodgers, whether or not you want to continue living long enough to become the villain that you've become. If Aaron Rodgers walked away, even after the torn Achilles, guys, that was a sign from on high that I am no longer supposed to be playing this game, that I never should have left Green Bay. 4 plays into my tenure as a Jet, my Achilles pops. I'm done. I'm interested in hosting Jeopardy. I'm interested in doing ayahuasca. I'm interested in, fighting vaccine mandates. I'm interested in all these other things right now.
Documentaries about my playing career.
I'm interested in being an enigma. I don't need to be a starting quarterback in the NFL anymore. And I think it's hard for people to know this about themselves, but Aaron Rodgers is the perfect example of what I'm talking about. He could have died the hero 3 times already in his career, and instead, and I understand why, he kept fighting and he kept coming back and he's doing it again. I mean, they're wondering what the future in New York is for Aaron Rodgers right now as they go through this coaching evaluation process, as they try to make a hire. One of the primary drivers of who the New York Jets hired to be their next head coach is going to have to be, how do you handle Aaron Rodgers? Hey, the future of our franchise, we're going to pay you $5 million+ to push us forward into what we hope is finally an era of contention. We do have some talent on this roster. How are you going to handle Aaron Rodgers?
And by the way, you could say to a bit of lesser extent, their new GM, because they're looking for a GM too.
Exactly.
That's also going to be a question in the interview. How you handle Aaron Rodgers, not just from a contract standpoint, but how are you going to just acquiesce to everything because he thinks he's a franchise player still? Are you going to curb some of those things? How do you handle Aaron Rodgers?
As Rex Ryan is campaigning to get that job right now, his campaign is being run on, I'm going to clean up the Aaron Rodgers. I'm going to drain the Aaron Rodgers swamp. That's how he is running his campaign to be the Jets' next head coach. And at least half the fan base is like, please get this weirdo out of here.
And he hasn't at least maybe I missed something, but from what I've seen, he hasn't explicitly said that means we're moving on from Aaron Rodgers, but he is saying, like what we heard from Sean Payton after Russell Wilson was run out of town, or when Russell Wilson's final year there. No, you're not getting an office. No, you're not.
You don't have your own coach that comes in.
Yeah, you're not getting all this star treatment because you used to be a star. You're going to be coached like a quarterback who needs to be coached.
Yeah, and that's honestly, I know that there are special talents in the NFL, but the best ones, right? Tom Brady's the best one. Joe Montana was the best one before him. Patrick Mahomes is the best one now. And the common thread among those guys is they were coached by cantankerous, ornery, you're going to do things the way I tell you to do things kind of guys.
Disciplinarian type guys. Andy Reid less so than the others, but
they also don't ask for that special treatment.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like Patrick Mahomes, the only grace, the only special accommodation that it seems that Patrick Mahomes has ever asked for in his career is that people tolerate his insufferable younger brother for the first 4 years of his tenure. And now he's not around anymore. So I think that even that is done.
Someone must have came up to him and said, "Hey, this is not a good look for the team. You gotta tell your brother to cool it."
And so at the end of the day, Aaron Rodgers' legacy is being affected. Now, if he wins a Super Bowl for the Jets somehow, maybe the new coach, maybe Rex Ryan does come in and say, he's used the word country club. The Aaron Rodgers country club thing is out. Okay. Yeah. Just get back to being a football player, Aaron.
Which is why that reminded me so much of how Sean Payton tried to approach Russell Wilson's second year in Denver.
Yeah.
And his first year in Denver it was that country club. He didn't use country club, but it was that same kind of thing that Russell Wilson was getting in Denver because they thought he was, even though there was tons of evidence that he was past his prime and no longer that franchise quarterback. The Denver Broncos thought that he was going to take them to the promised land, and so they acquiesced to everything to him.
My favorite stories about the Patriots franchise always come not from Tom Brady or from Bill Belichick, but come from guys like Julian Edelman, like Gronk, like Rodney Harrison, like these guys who, when asked about that relationship, will say, we would sit and film, and Coach Belichick would yell at Tom Brady for doing things wrong. And that was a tone setter for the entire franchise, because you're talking about the best player in the league. You're talking about the most important player in the league. You're talking about, for some of these stories, a guy who's already 4 Super Bowls deep, and they'd be doing film, and Bill Belichick, and maybe this is what led to the relationship fracturing at the end, but Bill would sit there and just be like, Tom, this is garbage. You suck. You can't do this. That's a bad rep. And that's exactly how.
Could you take a deep shot here? You're supposed to check down every time, Tom. Come on.
I mean, at the end of the day, you got to coach guys. And yes, special talent gets special coaching, but good football players, like team guys, don't require you to have that Barry Bonds, I have a whole bay in the locker room that's just for me.
Yeah.
Right? When you've jumped that shark as an athlete, it's time for someone close to you, or for somehow you yourself, to be like, hey, let's peel this back a little bit. Yes, you should get your rest day as a veteran. Yeah, you should get the extra massage therapy.
Get paid
whatever.
more.
You can get paid more. But you can't pretend you're not a player on this team.
Yeah.
You can't act like you're above everything and above everyone. And all the legends of the game, all the guys, there's all these anecdotal stories about how Derek Jeter was not that dude in a Yankees locker room ever, right?
Tim Duncan with the Spurs. I mean, we don't have the stories that Greg Popovich chewed him out like Belichick would chew out Brady, but we do have people saying, Tim let Pop coach him.
Dude, I've met Tim Duncan twice now.
Have you?
Once at fights, once at a charity event.
Because he's kind of a big MMA fan, right?
I think he's like a purple belt in jiu-jitsu now.
Yeah, it was a hobby he got into after he retired, yeah.
But he's like a normal – he tries at least to be as normal of a dude. Like, you can have a conversation with him and he's not going to talk down at you, even though he is literally talking down at you.
Yeah, he's 7 foot.
You know, like, that is an important thing for athletes. So dying a hero, that's the way to go out, in my opinion. And look, you want to bring this close to home? We're going to have Mark Harlan on the show today. Kyle Whittingham has taken a massive, massive risk with his career legacy by deciding to come back repeatedly. He could have walked away after either of those Rose Bowl years, and the statue goes up 5 days later. You know what I mean? The statue's going to go up regardless.
Yeah, he's not risking that.
You talk about riding off into the sunset. I truly do believe, and Coach Witt has never confirmed this for me, and if he's listening now, Coach, call in 877-353-0700 and either tell me to shut up or confirm what I'm saying. I think if you beat Ohio State in that Rose Bowl, I think that maybe he's done. I think if you beat Oregon in the 2019 Pac-12 championship game and you go to the playoff, regardless of the result that year, I think he's probably done. I think if maybe you beat Penn State and you win a Rose Bowl after back-to-back Pac-12 championships, I think he's done. There's always going to be something that draws somebody like Kyle Whittingham back to the game, but it gets riskier and riskier and riskier every single year because, yes, a different level of talent is now coming into the Utah football program, but there's also these new obstacles of name, image, and likeness, of transfer portal, of the head coach in waiting situation with Morgan Scalley, of you finally, instead of having, contender year, championship year, instead of having that, you now have, and then a couple of rough years. So now you have to wash away that in everyone's mind to truly die the hero that you could have been before. And one of the things we should love about Kyle Whittingham is he doesn't give a bleep about what we think. And so he's not going to make his decision based on that. But when we're talking about Utah football and Coach Witt in that context, the only thing that can change his legacy at all is winning a Big 12 championship and going to the college football playoff.
And winning a big playoff game, because he hasn't quite. I mean, in the Power 4-5 era, he hasn't had that big against a Power 4 team win in the postseason.
I shouldn't have said the only thing. There are two things that can change his legacy. One is bouncing back, becoming the program that you were 2 years ago, winning a Big 12 championship, going to a college football playoff. Then we're going to say, not only did he do it in the Pac-12, he did it in the Big 12. Not only did he do it with that roster that had Cam Rising and so, he did it with Devin Dampier or with Isaac Wilson or whoever it is, right? He showed, again, he did it in the Mountain West Conference. He did it in the Pac-12 Conference. He did it in the Big 12 Conference. And this is one of the best coaches in the history of college football, not just the best coach at the University of Utah. That changed the legacy. That improves the legacy. And then the other outcome is circumstances, bad luck, injuries, attrition, a disconnect from the culture that you created, a disconnect from the youth and the players and what generation are we in now for college students? The Gen Z kids still?
I think it's Z.
Are we Z? Are we Generation Alpha yet?
I know Alpha or A or whatever is the next one.
Like maybe you can't
coming in a few years.
Maybe you can't talk to those. Whatever it is, whatever could be the reasoning, your legacy gets affected by you going out with a whimper instead of a roar. Right? And again, the statue goes up regardless. It doesn't change the things that you have accomplished to this point. But Bill Belichick, the same thing, dude. When Tom Brady was leaving, Bill Belichick should have been like, bye, I'm done. Right? Whatever Bill does at North Carolina, or if he takes an NFL job this cycle or next cycle or whatever, he gets the statue in New England no matter what. Nothing changes that run, that time, that snapshot of football history. Nothing can affect that for Bill Belichick. Nothing can affect that. Nothing can affect the great Kyle Whittingham years. That's one of the great things about being a champion. That's one of the most important things about being a champion. And if you go back to your little league or your high school or your whatever, your coaches probably said this to you. Win this game, we'll be champions. No one can ever take that away from you. And it's absolutely true. It gets etched into your headstone if you want it. No one ever gets to take it away from you. And it's a really good feeling. It's a cool thing. No one can ever take away what Kyle Whittingham has accomplished as back-to-back Pac-12 champs, multiple-time Mountain West Conference champs, all the guys that he's developed to be NFL players and stuff. All of those things, right? You've built up that credibility, that cachet. That's money in the bank. Never going to go away. But he takes a risk when he decides to keep riding the same train. If it doesn't go well, if the finish isn't a glorious one, all of us are going to look back and we're going to be like, man, he could have finished on one of the highest notes.
Yeah, maybe he should have retired sooner. That's the question. Should he have retired sooner was the question we'll ask if that's the case.
And I say it about Kyle Whittingham to highlight, like a local guy. Jerry Sloan.
Yeah.
Jerry Sloan, the end of Jerry Sloan's tenure was tragic.
Yeah. And Darren Williams has been painted as the villain, and he's earned a lot of that, but
well, to Darren's credit, Darren is a great guy, and to Darren's credit, his maturity and development as a human being since then allowed him to be reflective, and he's been public about it, and he and Jerry reconciled and all that stuff. So, that's all good. But
I think it's also fair to do what you're starting to do here and say Jerry probably should have hung it up a little sooner than that.
I mean, and, it's easy to say that in hindsight. You always have the benefit of hindsight on these things. But we put this in the notes, James, and I used Aaron Rodgers as an example. Kyle Whittingham is a question mark to be determined, right? Bill Belichick is a question mark to be determined. There are so many guys, all-time greats, some of my favorite players, some of my favorite athletes ever, did not go out. They did not die the hero they lived long enough to see themselves become a villain of sorts. Or even worse, to become like a sympathetic character of sorts, where people were just like, ah, man, I don't like seeing that anymore. The greatest football player of all time, you could make a case, Jerry Rice, the greatest like individual performer in football ever, Jerry Rice. Jerry Rice's career ended with a stint with the Raiders, still good. Broncos, Seahawks,
even worse than the Bronco one, you could argue.
Like if you're the best receiver in the history of the game and your career ends with you being cut by a division rival,
it's rough.
That's not how your career should end. You have now lived long enough to become the villain. Yeah. That sucks, right? Patrick Ewing, he finished his career, I believe.
I think it was Sonics.
With the Sonics?
Yeah.
After time with the Toronto Raptors? It's like, what? Patrick, no, you're a Knick.
Yeah.
Be a Knick forever.
And he would, and even worse, not only did it look strange because he was in a different uniform, he was a non-factor on that Sonics team, which wasn't that good.
Even when you're not a non-factor, even when you're really good, as Michael Jordan was with the Wizards, he was really good he was an all-star with the Wizards. His numbers were phenomenal with the Wizards, but he wasn't the hero Michael Jordan with the Wizards.
Because it's a lot of it's because he was the GM. A lot of people forget that he was the general manager of the Wizards playing for the team because he screwed up the roster construction and said, you know what, I'm going to come here and save the day. And then they were just okay. just missing the playoffs both of his years, even though he had some really good individual numbers.
Who went out the worst? Aaron Rodgers, I think, is going to be going out the worst.
Yeah.
Michael Jordan, he went out the worst. I don't like how Jerry Rice's career ended. I don't like how Patrick Ewing, those guys are two players I really like. I don't like how Karl Malone's career ended. Just take away all of the stuff we don't like about Karl Malone, the human. Karl Malone,
as a basketball player.
Karl Malone, the basketball player, chasing that championship with the Lakers and having to be so lackluster. I don't like the way that ended.
Yeah.
And, again, I'm the armchair quarterback here. I'm not the guy who has to make these decisions. I'm not the guy who has to let go at the right time. I feel a certain entitlement to talk about this because I did walk away at the right time. The peak, the pinnacle of my own athletic career is not as high as some of these guys, not nearly as high as a lot of these guys that we're talking about, because this is like American culture when you're talking about NFL greats. You're talking about NBA greats. For me as an individual, I recognized that, oh, man, I'm probably not going to have a realistic high percentage opportunity to achieve more than what I'm achieving today in this tournament and winning this championship. And I'm 35 years old, and it's not going to get easier, and now is the time to walk away. So I feel a little arrogance about that I selected the right time to walk away. So I feel a little entitled to wag my finger and say, you should have done it the way I did it, even though I'm not exactly saying that, because it was hard. But it also wasn't that hard if you're realistic with yourself.
Yeah, self-awareness is important, especially in these circumstances.
Also, to be fair, me walking away from what would have been, a couple $100,000 probably for my next fight instead of $40 million, which is what Aaron Rodgers is going to get paid to come back for another season. Two different things.
Makes it much harder.
Two very different things.
Yeah, I mean, honorable mention. I'm not saying any, I think almost all of these ones we mentioned are worse than this one, but I think an honorable mention is Andrew Luck when it comes to leaving it the worst. And maybe I'm biased because Colts guy, but also
really,
you're almost convincing me with the hey, he left us wanting more.
He did
argument.
See, Andrew Luck definitely died the hero.
Yeah, but I'm a little conflicted on this because I'm not with the mob at the time, the mob of Colts fans and others at the time that thought that were out for his head, because I was like, do you realize how many injuries this guy's just overcome? Yeah. Like, we got to give him some grace here and let him walk away because he doesn't want to be hurt anymore. He doesn't want to rehab anymore. But on the other hand, to walk away weeks before a season where maybe I'm delusional saying this, but they they probably would have been the Chiefs' biggest challenge in the AFC that season.
Even if that's true, it requires Andrew Luck being healthy and bought in to make it happen.
And he clearly wasn't.
And he clearly wasn't, so he died a hero. Andrew Luck left you wanting more, right? Peyton Manning walked away with you, everyone looking at it and just be like, gosh, I'd love to see him try it one more time, but now's the right time to go out.
Yeah,
John Elway, Terrell Davis, these guys that got to end it on championships. Our guy Weddle got to end it on a championship. Andrew Whitworth, his teammate, got to end it on a championship. Yeah, they probably could have come back and, limped their way through some more games and stayed on rosters and been depth players and that coach in the locker room type individuals. Nope, time to go. Yeah. And that's leave them wanting more.
Peyton Manning, you could argue, did both because
that's right.
He left with the championship, but he was also a shell of himself. We also found out he hung on 1 year too long.
There's probably like a third category where it's just like, hey, it worked out for you, but don't come back.
Yeah.
All right. I want to remind everyone before I take a break, ESPN 792.1 FM, our cash kickoff is here. It's time for your shot to win $1,000 to pay the bills. Text SPREE, SPREE, to 508-777-1000. That's 508-777-1000 for your chance to win. 508-777-1000. Text the word SPREE, SPREE. This is a nationwide contest for $1,000 from ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. Sean Mooney is next. What can this Utah basketball team do to close the gap on Big 12 competition? It's the Sean O'Connell Show on ESPN 700. Sometimes you tune into the Sean O'Connell show and you're like, you know what, that's enough Sean for me. But other times you're like, I need double the amount of Sean. And we know that you're going to have that feeling, so we ask Sean Mooney to join us. Utah basketball insider, former Utah Hooper, and, of course, color analyst on the radio broadcast right here on ESPN 700 alongside the voice of the Utes, Bill Riley. Sean Mooney joins me again. It's Sean and Sean for the next 15 minutes or so. Hey, Sean.
Hi, Sean. How are you? I like the double Sean. I'm not sure that my wife would agree, but I like it.
Yeah, my wife would be like, I'll take 15 minutes of two Seans, of double the amount of Sean, as long as you give me, like, 24 hours of zero Sean. She'd probably be willing to make that trade.
Sean, exactly. I know Christina has been super excited about me being on the road. She's like, this is the greatest thing ever. For 30 years, you didn't leave, and now you're on the road, and I can actually have some peace.
Oh, yes, that's called marital bliss, ladies and gentlemen. That's just how it works when you're married to a Sean. All right, let's talk about this Utah basketball team still seeking that first Big 12 win. It was a big-time loss to Iowa State. And the start of the game, it looked like, all right, they're doing some nice things. They're going to be able to keep pace. And then it falls apart. Is that a depth issue? Is that a fitness issue? Why is it not sustainable on the road?
Yeah, I mean, let's just say not sustainable right now in the first three games, not even on the road. I would say that's an Iowa State issue.
Fair. They are a really good team.
Sean, they're really good. And it's interesting because I actually think we probably played our best game in the Big 12 against them. And it's hard to understand that, like, as a casual fan, but we met their physicality. I talked to Spence Checketts before the game and talked about physicality. We were really, really physical. And, Iowa State, they're better than we are. Baylor, they're better than we are. Texas Tech, they're better than we are. So, I mean, I expect to lose those three games. You get lucky. I mean, you just get lucky if you beat one of those teams. I do think that we played our best game. And then what Iowa State does, and they do it so well, is they double the ball, not only in the post, but they double it up high. And our poise wasn't great against it. I think they ended up going on a string of like 20 points off of turnovers. We did a little better in the second half against that, but they're really good.
So I'm actually totally fine with that self-awareness and being realistic about, like, well, look, yeah, Texas Tech and Baylor and Iowa State, they're better than we are at this juncture. Mm-hmm. But how many teams are we going to have to say that about in the Big 12 this season?
Well, okay, so I've been watching Oklahoma State and Kansas State. And again, like, I'm new to this, just like we all are. So Steve Lutz is a first-year coach. He's in a great coaching line. He did great at Western Kentucky and Texas A&M Corpus Christi. This is a team that we can beat. I believe we can beat Oklahoma State this Saturday. I believe we can beat Kansas State. Lang's got a team, but just watching these teams, they're still athletic and they're good. But Oklahoma State doesn't have the shooters that some of these other teams have. Obviously athletic, but those two teams I think we can beat. TCU, Colorado, there's some surprises in the Big 12. Cincinnati has been ranked most of the early season, but right now they're 0-3. West Virginia looks pretty dangerous, even though they're 2-1. They've got they're 2-0 against top 10. They're 3-0 against top 25. They're teams we can beat for sure, Sean.
When you look at the field goal shooting percentage for this team, against Iowa State, you're going to have to shoot well against a team like Iowa State. And when you don't, that's why it ends up being 30-plus points, right? Or 20-plus points. Yeah. How do they improve that consistently? Is it a shot selection thing? I think we had this conversation last time. Yeah. Is it a shot selection thing? Is it a ball movement thing? Because if you're going to beat some of these teams that are equal to you or better than you in the Big 12 conference, you can't have paltry percentage numbers.
Yeah, and so right now, let's establish, I think Texas Tech, the jury's out about their defense. They're going to be better as the year goes on because McCaslin's teams typically are really good. But the things that we're good at, Sean, they're taking away. And what we need to be better at is in the mid range. If we ever can have, I mean, it's hard for us to score in the mid range, Sean, and then we've got to score at the rim better than we are, because they're going to take away the three. We shoot the three well. We have players that shoot the three well. Off the dribble, we've got to be better in general. Like Iowa State, I don't know if you watched the game, but Curtis Jones, number 5, he can really shoot it outside. That kid hit like 3 or 4 floaters in mid-range. Tamon Lipsey, Keyshawn Gilbert, those guys go to the rim with such power, and they kind of just hang up there and put a lot of pressure on any kind of rim protection. We got to be better at the rim, and we got to be better in mid-range.
Sean Mooney, my guest here, talking a little University of Utah hoops. It is so far 0-3 in Big 12 play. Next up will be Oklahoma State at home. That's coming up this weekend, a 5 p.m. Mountain Time tip against the Cowboys. And you've already said this, not the same level of squad as what you just matched with Iowa State. So against a team like Oklahoma State, as they're game planning right now, as they're doing the film study, they're preparing schematically and physically. What are the keys to victory against Oklahoma State?
So a couple of things. One, we're going to be able to sag off of many of their players because they don't shoot it as well. They got a 6'8" kid named Chi-Chi who shoots 37% from the three. Their big is 6 for 10. They'll go into their big. His nickname is Bugatti. Great nickname. I think we may want to think about doubling him because they're going to try and play through him. And then they've got a guard, Bryce Thompson, who shoots it okay. But really, I think the game plan is to sag and dig if we don't double, so meaning help down on the post, and then cut off those drivers. So they only have 2 shooters, and that's going to help us. Chi-Chi Rodriguez is one.
Why don't we have a guy with the nickname like Bugatti? We need to, I mean,
I know.
Mongolian Mike, the Shark, those are good. Those are really good. We need a Bugatti. We need someone like that.
We do. We got like something. Oh, I shouldn't say this. I was going to say something that I think's funny. We've got like, we've got like Hugo, or we go. We need a Bugatti.
All right. When you see guys like Gabe Madsen, even against elite competition in the league, he's not shooting particularly well, but battles through the entirety of a game, ends up double-digit scoring. It's not his best stat line. It's not, he's going to have better games, but the fight, I know that the moral victory thing in big-time college basketball is not something we should bite down too hard on, but I like the fight out of a guy who knows what he's up against, who looks at the scoreboard and sees that you're double digits for 20+ minutes and is still battling. Yep, I agree. I would say that the Matson boys, they're going to give you everything they've got every time down the floor. We actually have a lot of players like that. This team, they are playing at a high effort level, and it was really nice to see Gabe come on track, man. He hasn't scored in double digits since Eastern Washington, and he didn't shoot it especially well, and he hunted a couple threes. He took a couple that were uncharacteristic, tougher threes, but he also feels the pressure, Sean, because, right now, I mean, Gabe is our guy. He's definitely the top of every scouting board. Everyone knows when Gabe goes to eat, when he goes to the bathroom. They know everything about him, so it makes it a little harder for him. How much you're so busy with this team in particular? How much of like the national college basketball you're able to watch right now? Yeah, I don't watch a ton of it, but I really stay informed because I love it, and so I have a pretty good idea. Like I would say right now, Auburn, and listen, Iowa State lost Auburn by 2, but they were up 19 on Auburn in Hawaii. That's how good Iowa State is. I would say that Auburn's the best team. Obviously, Florida just put it on Tennessee. Sean. Yeah, a 13-1 Florida team right now, and Tennessee. Sorry, 14-1 Florida team. Tennessee, good squad, very athletic. The SEC is right now the best conference in college. It's not even close. And I know we're just in the Big 12, but I think the prediction for the SEC is 11.8 teams making it to the tournament. And that prediction is based on data, not like, personal opinion.
having seen Mississippi State up close, wow. I mean, that league is loaded with talent, top to bottom. I mean, pretty much everyone in that league is going to get in the tournament. That's honestly, that's a little boring. It's fun to have teams that you don't know much about make the tournament. That's what makes the NCAA so fun to watch, in my opinion.
Currently 7 SEC teams ranked in the top 25, if I'm counting correctly. Arkansas just on the outside of that picture, receiving votes, as is Mizzou. So, there's some talent and some depth there.
Yeah, and our league's really good. I mean, I think we have 3 locks. Iowa State, Kansas. I'm going to put Arizona in that, and then we can't we often forget. People may not forget, but Houston's the best defensive team in the country, and they have, I think, 87% of their players are back, which is a really big deal in today's college basketball. Like this team we're playing, they have 14 new players. Oklahoma State.
Circling back to the Cowboys, is this Utah's best shot to get their first conference win, at least relative to the first 3 games that they played?
Yes, absolutely. It's at home. Mark my words right now, we're going to beat Oklahoma State this Saturday night.
Love it. And Sean Mooney will be there. You can listen to it right here on ESPN 700. And Bill Riley will be on the call. Sean, always appreciate your time. Thanks for stopping by, sir.
Thanks, Sean. Have a great day.
Sean Mooney, color analyst on the Utah radio broadcast, Utah Hoops, in action this Saturday at the Huntsman Center.
A Sean Mooney guarantee.
I like that.
That's spicy for the Walk Sean's interview.
We're still workshopping.
Double Sean, Walk Sean's.
Yeah.
Because he revealed to us, he reminded us that he was also a walk-on some great Utah teams, just like you.
Except he actually found a way to the floor, which is different.
He earned a scholarship at some point too.
The 2 Seans brought to you today as part of the show by Les Schwab Tires. Today and every day, Les Schwab Tires hooks you up with tires, wheels, accessories for whatever you drive. Stop by the local Les Schwab. Professionals there get the job done right the very first time, which is so big in today's world of business and lack of customer service. All right. James Franklin providing a little bulletin board material. We got a college football playoff semifinal game, and the guy is feeling himself after finally winning a couple of big games this year. James Franklin, he's spouting off. We'll get to that in 3 minutes on the Sean O'Connell Show. And don't forget, in 12 minutes, Mark Harlan, Utah Athletic Director, right here in studio. Be here when he's here. ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. Welcome back to the Sean O'Connell Show, ESPN 792.1 FM, proud part of Utah's ESPN radio network. A distinct pleasure to welcome Mark Harlan into studio here in person for a little State of the Athletic Department address, if we'll let it be that. Mark, welcome. How are you?
Sean, I'm doing great. I'm glad I was able to come down and see you. I wanted to do this, when you first started. We never got the chance, so good to be able to be here today, and good to have you in Salt Lake. I know you've been traveling all over the place.
Yeah.
Good to both be in the same place at the same time.
December was a wild month to travel. This one, not so much, although I guess in a couple weeks I'm off to Dubai. First time I've been to Dubai, so that'll be fun, calling some fights over there.
A quick little flight.
If you needed me to get a hold of someone over there for NIL funds, I'll do what I can for you, Mark.
Hey, I love it. I appreciate it.
All right. So we're going to jump all over the place. It has been a while since you and I have had a chance to sit down and have a discussion. Just kind of the 10,000 foot view of how things are going up there on the hill with you, the athletic department. You got men's and women's basketball. You got gymnastics going on right now. There is no off season in football anymore, it doesn't seem like, and you're juggling a lot of things right now. How's it going?
Well, listen, it's this time of year you always get a chance to reflect. We pretty much operate obviously off an academic year primarily, but it's when you go through a new year, new calendar year, it certainly gives you that moment to reflect. I think the first thing that comes to mind is just the transition into the Big 12. It was a heavy lift for so many in our department, that's staff, coaches, administration, and certainly our student athletes. And I think by and by, I'm really happy with how we've assimilated. We had last year to go to meetings and attend and learn and do a lot of study about all the different sports and their programs and how they operated and where we fit in. And I think I'm real proud of the way we've just jumped in, right? And we haven't won every game, certainly, but I think we fit in really well. And I think our upside in the Big 12 is going to continue to help the university. I've spent a lot of time with Commissioner Yormark. I just like his aggressiveness. I like the way he rolls. I think that's really important in this day and time. You need a fighter out there, and he's been great. So I think that's the big thing. I think in terms of what's so important to me personally, and I know this university is, we found out recently we have a 95% graduation rate of all student athletes that have entered the last 5 or 6 years, and that's an all-time mark for us. It's one of the top in the country, and that's the North Star for us, right? We can talk about NIL, we can talk about payments, we can talk about all of those things, but to see that during this last 2.5 years in particular of a lot of different changes, our students are still really focused in. I think football had one of their all-time best graduation rates. I think it was close to 94% during tremendous success, Rose Bowl years and all of that. So very, very gratifying. Competition, obviously, we've had some real exciting things. Our volleyball team, hosting the tournament. Our soccer team is a lot better, cross country all the time. But I understand football takes a lot of the attention for everybody. And that was a tough year. I think everybody has had a chance to really take a deep breath. Whether you're Kyle Whittingham, myself, or any student competing in that program. And it was a tough year. We had high expectations internally. External is what it is, but internally we had a lot of expectations. I think we got as high as 10th in late September. I remember leaving Stillwater with a really hard-fought win, right before we found out Cam wasn't going to be able to play, and Isaac went in there and did a great job. And just from that moment on, we lost 7 straight, and it was challenging. And fast forward to where we are now, really pleased with what Coach has done to rebuild not only the roster, and we can get into that, but I'm really excited about the new coaches he's brought in. There's a sense of energy over there about what these coaches are bringing in, and certainly combine that with like I said, these new students coming in. So really, really excited about the efforts, and to see the guys back in the weight room has been gratifying to see.
Yeah, I mean, it just keeps chugging along for fans, right? We all, and for people in a position like mine, all of us are like, all right, what's next? What's going to happen this year? Well, they're already doing what's going to happen. They're already getting back in shape, speed school, adding to, the strength and conditioning program. There was that strange, we're not going to a bowl game this year. There's a little bit more downtime than usual. And there was these hanging questions over the program, particularly with Coach Witt's future.
Right.
And the succession plan with Morgan Scalley, obviously well publicized, already in place. Curious, how how active was the communication between you and those coaches during that time?
Well, specifically to Coach Whittingham first, I mean, obviously the agreement that we have always had between the two of us is, when he's ready, he's going to let me know. Obviously, as we got down into November and, with certainly when we realized we weren't going to be bowl eligible, those conversations increased. We had, Sunday meetings after games. We talked through everything. And he asked for some grace about having a chance to take a deep breath. And certainly I understood that. I would say once we got back from Orlando, which was a really good moment for our team to have that win and to be able to sing again in the locker room. We'll see, that's such a tradition here to sing the fight song after victory. We hadn't sung it in a while.
It'd been weeks, yeah.
Yeah, and to see that. And so he and I got back together, and the president, who's so incredible in all our efforts, the three of us just talked, and he made it real clear when he had really had a chance to clear his mind on it that he had the passion, the energy, and certainly the strategic vision to get us back to this incredible place that he himself has put us over these years. So once that locked in, obviously we were ready to roll. He was making the decisions on the staff that needed to come in. As far as Morgan goes, I mean, Morgan has understood from the very beginning that he's the coach in waiting, and that time will come. Obviously he and Morgan have a great relationship going back well before I entered the fray 7.5 years ago. So they had a lot of conversations about everything, and Morgan is ready to go and get after this year and has really developed a great relationship with Jason, our new OC, and that's great to see as well. So, it's all systems go.
So the Jason Beck hire, right? When a head coach with the reputation of Kyle Whittingham, with the long-standing tenure of Kyle Whittingham, is out on the hunt for an offensive coordinator for the first time in 5 years, how much does he have to bring across your desk? I mean, I don't really know how that process works. Do you just say, let me know who it's going to be, and I'll sign the check whenever we have to cut it, or how does that work?
Yeah, I mean, listen, the one thing that I'm always very consistent with my head coaches is the hiring of their staffs is arguably one of the most important things they do. And so I'm there as a sounding board. I'm there as providing advice or information I might have on any particular candidate. But inevitably, that's the decision of a head coach, because that's the bunker that they will live in with that. That's the bunker that they're creating for the person that they'll be with. So on this matter, it was just him going through names and people he was thinking about and anything that I particularly had. In the case of Jason, because he's so close with so many people in the state of Utah, it became clear that you could see all the statistical analysis. Anybody can go online and see that. But as I made a few calls, I kept hearing really positive things about him. The athletic director at University of New Mexico, who now is the athletic director at Houston, and within our Big 12 meetings now, he was, really had some good things to say about Jason and how he thought and how he really worked with the staff. So all signs were pointing in the right direction, and I was really glad we were able to get him.
Quick side note, poor New Mexico lost everyone that was part of what looked like the beginning of a rebuild there. But that's just, I guess, the way it is in college sports right now. It's a competitive environment, and you got to be able to live in it.
That's right. I mean, you just have to be able to manage. It's the most challenging situation I think any coaches have found themselves in. Again, football takes a lot of the headlines, but all of the coaches are dealing with that. Basketball's had a little bit of experience with this because transferring was really high even previous to this NIL era, but you have to just really grind it out, and you have to be ready to make those changes.
Mark Harlan, Utah Athletic Director, my guest here in studio on the Sean O'Connell Show, talking about Utah football for the time being. We'll get to some hoops here in just a second. You did a two-part piece with the Deseret News recently, and one of the things that came up in that conversation that I was very interested in was, this is not a direct quote, but to the effect of, even though it was a bad year in football and not a great year like on the field success-wise, the fundraising in the NIL department, the fundraising for the athletic department is at an all-time high. How do you pull that off when everything says, well, winning leads to money and money leads to winning? This was the one year that it would have been understandable if things dipped, and it doesn't sound like it has.
Well, I think that's a tribute to our incredible fan base and the fact that they understand this isn't about a game or two or a season. We're bigger and more important in their lives, and certainly in the lives of our student athletes and coaches, to just walk away because we didn't have a good year. Listen, I understand the disappointment. We're disappointed internally, and we know work that has to be done is upon us, and we're attacking it. But I think when we launched our year-end, drive, which was referred to in that article, we really challenged our fans to help us. We could use some more money for scholarships, and they responded in a profound way. But I want to make it clear that doesn't mean we sit back and take that for granted. We're honored by it. We understand that we have an obligation to put out the best possible team in any of our sports at all times. But I think our fans kind of looked beyond just this season. They understand the success that this program has had. And, in the last 4 years, we've won 2 conference championships. And 1 year we won 8 games, and this year we didn't get it done. So we know what we have been, and we know what we can be, and I think they see the same thing.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but it feels like for an athletic department, it's a bit of a strange time when it comes to the management of funds, because you have collectives, you have NIL, which I think you're not supposed to officially be, hands-on with. And then coming up, you've got this House versus NCAA rule changes coming with that, a true revenue-sharing model with student athletes that, again, to my knowledge, you very much have to be hands-on with. So how do those two things play with one another in the new era that is constantly reshaping itself?
Yeah, so let's start with the Crimson Collective, which has been the really incredible organization that really lifted us through this period. They've been phenomenal, right? I mean, 3+ years of working with them, seeing revenue consistently climb, people donating, events that were established. There's full-time people that work on that. To your point, we're not allowed to have staffers directly involved, but there has been some loosening up over the last 16 months where we can help them more directly with fundraising and have more conversations, and that's really helped their efforts. They got a great board, many names our fans would know. I mean, Eric Weddle and many others are on that board, and they've been phenomenal. And so this last year in particular, we just saw a dramatic increase in funds that we were able to distribute, particularly to football and men's basketball primarily, and women's basketball and gymnastics as well. So we saw, pretty dramatic increases, which if you look back really helped us retain. If you look specifically to football, that's how you bring Cam back. That's how you bring all these folks that were on the team this year. Because, when you're at that level, you're going to have a lot of people sniping your folks, and you got to be able to get those guys. Fast forward to this year, the Crimson Collective is still in that position until we get the official baton passed, which will be kind of later this spring, and then starting in July 1, as long as the court case holds and the settlement goes into place. Now all those funds now can come from the University of Utah Athletic Department. Fundraise funds now go right directly to the university, operational funds, and we'll be all in at the $20+ million level that's allowed, and that is a cap across all universities. So hopefully there'll be a little bit more level playing field as we've seen that. I mean, there might be some schools that have been well above $20 million for football, but now everybody has to kind of come down. So we're all in on that. We're excited about that. And the last thing I'll say on that, it's not just the fundraising part of it and having the resources, it's the strategic way you manage it. And I think what our coaches have done a really good job is the conversations having taken place earlier. So we had a whole team of people, for example, working with our football team in November about retention, expectations, how is that going to look for them, whether they have an agent, family, what have you. And I would say, listen, I know the focus is always on who left, and I understand that, but we're real proud of the ones that we were able to retain that were really being chased by some incredible programs, and then conversely, how we were able to bring in some of the top-level talent that were ranked really highly in their position groups. So now we fast forward into the new day, and we're excited about what that will look. That will mean more resources for our student athletes going forward.
How fluid are discussions on, kind of where these transfer portal windows are, the guardrails that may or may not ever be put in place, whether or not tampering is something that anyone's actually ever going to report on or enforce against, things like that? How active are those discussions in the rulemaker set with college football right now?
I think the most important thing to say is with the settlement, which hopefully we'll hear definitively on April 8th, I think it is. That's actually, ironically, the day of the men's basketball championship. There is going to be, and already starting to be structured, that even this morning I had a meeting to learn more about it from our commissioner. There will be significant penalties regarding going over the cap, which we just discussed, and tampering. significant is really what we're waiting to see. What does that mean? Is that suspensions of key players in that? Are we going to get back to student athletes being ineligible? All of those things. At the end of the day, it's very difficult to prove tampering because you could say this person's advocate talked to this person advocate and all of that other stuff. But when you're talking about not just an NCAA structure, now you're talking about federal government involved and approved, there's certainly going to be more teeth to bone. But we'll have to wait and see. But I found myself along the way in this path of not really getting too uptight about tampering because, again, it's going to happen. You just have to make sure you have the resources and the right environment. And you're not going to save them all, but you're going to save most. And you also have an opportunity when you lose them, to go out and find some really great kids. And certainly that's what we've done here at Utah.
I asked that question in part because it feels like you and the coaching staff, not only with football, with all sports, especially the revenue-producing sports, you're asked to navigate an environment where there are new rules, and it seems like those rules might be changing sooner than later or could potentially be changing sooner or later. And even as you get ready for this revenue-sharing model, like you've mentioned, it's not 100% official yet. So you've got to totally prepare for that, be 100% ready and mobile if and when it happens. But also something could happen where you're not distributing funds directly to student athletes. It feels like a big ask for everyone in college sports right now.
Yeah, I mean, it's a head-on-a-swivel moment daily, and you have to handle change really well. You have to make sure you have people surrounded in this process that can handle change. We don't like to have complainers. We want folks that are going to try to be as strategic as we can. And I would say on everything, we got 6 different roads, and you try to follow the best road. But to your point, we've talked in depth what happens if this settlement all of a sudden crumbles because of different reasons. Well, at this point, it's hard to imagine how anybody would be self-sustained by not coming from campus resources, right? Collectives are great, but eventually they have a certain ceiling to them. And I imagine we'll figure that out when we get there. But I will say all signs are pointing to the settlement going through, even recently from some signals from the judge managing the case. So I think we're heading in that direction, and my hope is that there will be more structure, there will be more policing of appropriate, or I should say inappropriate behavior, and Utah's all in on it.
Mark Harlan is my guest here on the Sean O'Connell Show. We got about 10 more minutes that I told him we'd only keep him for about 10 more minutes, but I'm probably going to try and milk as much time out of him as I can.
We're good.
He's a busy man, but it doesn't happen every day that I get the athletic director on my show. So I never thought, even though I saw some big changes coming in college football, I never thought we'd be talking about general managers being a huge part of college sports staffs. And there's a couple different strategies being put into place right now. I think the most notable and interesting one, Andrew Luck is now the GM at Stanford, right? So you've got this all-time great alum, this big-name guy, NFL success. He's already got all the money he needs, whatever. And he's back clearly just to help his alma mater. Very forward-facing, becoming a face of a program, even in a way that probably the head coach of the team is not necessarily. A departure from the strategy that Utah is currently employing. But when you look at GMs and the roles that they now take, what are your thoughts?
Well, I give Whit a lot of credit. I think it was a year and a half ago, it could be longer, maybe 2. We started looking at this general manager concept and knowing it's a lot different, right? You would say in the NFL because there's a player personnel side and, certainly the coaching side. And I guess the really good organizations are always communicating at a high level, but that's not the case. The GM's making the personnel decisions and the coach is coaching them. Well, that's not where we are in college. So we talked about, that job and how it would look. And we realized we had someone really talented in Robert Bletchen on the staff. And Bobby has done a really good job really growing into that role. So his job, obviously, is to look at all the position groups. We have certain kind of monetizations on all those groups, prioritizing, the roster and all those things. And it was that strategy that we deployed, obviously, as we got into the back half of the season, as we looked at player development. The coaches are still critically involved, all the assistant coaches, in looking at all the transfer film and all that kind of stuff. But there's the negotiation piece that we discussed earlier, and Bobby's been great. We have budget for positions. We make decisions on certain if we want to go higher, back and forth. Dare I say, a lot of agent conversations. Who would have thunk it, 5 years ago, we're in the middle. I just a side note, I remember my first, we're in a new era, was we were in Gainesville and opening the season, and this gentleman came up to me and he said, "Mr. Harlan, I just want to introduce you. I'm such and such. I'm Cam's agent." And I went, "Wow." And he goes, and I'm staying at this hotel. And I go, wow. I remember when you guys used to have to stay at another hotel and you'd run when guys like me were walking down the street, and we both laughed. And, now here we are. And I will say it's been interesting to see that evolution because the agents have gotten more professional and all of that. But Bobby coordinates all that. We have the same thing for men's basketball. We have a gentleman that's doing a really good job, was really instrumental in bringing in a lot of the players. And again, it's similar to the GM, but at the end of the day, Whit has that final say. He and I work on the budgetary numbers, but he has the final say on player personnel decisions.
Looking at that sort of change and knowing that there are guys that are going to talk directly to you, and obviously you have to be collaborative with your coaching staff, but you're going to run into so-and-so's agent, and so-and-so's agent is going to tell you, the athletic director, who's not maybe finger on the controls type position, hey, my guy's getting offered this much to go here. What are you going to do about it? How are you supposed to answer that question?
Well,
in your position.
Yeah, I mean, I think what I do, and Jeff Rudy, who directly oversees football with me, I mean, we just work with those conversations as they come. There could be an example. Well, they say X and Y school are offering this. Well, there have been moments where I've picked up the phone and called X, Y school's athletic director and say, this is what we're hearing. And that athletic director may say, not true. Or in one case, literally started laughing out loud. I wish we could do that. So,
Tell me who that was, Mark. Tell me now.
I'm sure everyone would like to know that. But those kind of conversations still are ongoing. You try to do the best you can, but it is what it is. It gets back to your belief in that player, the general manager's role, the coach's role, and how far do you want to go despite the threat. I mean, recruiting will always inflate if we're all going after the same person, and we'll make good decisions on those. But there's also this middle group, that doesn't always do that way. And I think that's why, as I was looking over the spreadsheets of our payroll for football recently, I mean, it's just a real strategic outline of a lot of different things. And I really appreciate Kyle and Bobby and the whole staff and the way they put this together.
How binding can you make an agreement with a team and a player right now in the current rule set of college football? Because not just Utah, everyone is experiencing this, where everyone reports, or we all hear, or you see the social media that so-and-so is happy here and that the team stepped up and did what it needed to do to keep me happy here. And then a week later or 2 weeks later or a month later or however longer, they're gone. So how binding can these agreements be in 2024, in January of 2025?
Well, I mean, they're certainly evolving these contracts. We have more liberty to put things in the contracts as we get to revenue share starting in July. But again, I want to remind everybody we're in a very competitive environment in recruiting. So let's say, for example, we have X player, and name the sport, but let's say it's a high-profile sport, and we really want to have a exit fee. We want to have pay back your signing bonus or whatever. Well, that's all great in a vacuum, but guess what? 7 other schools want the same young man, and they're not putting that penalty in. And guess who they stop returning calls to? So there's strategy and intellectual obvious things that one should put in, and we're certainly doing that where we can. But on some of these ones, these game changers, you've got to be really smart and you got to be in the game. As far as binding, I mean, listen, they're still students. If they want to, up and go, then they would, if they come in the transfer portal, that obviously would end their agreement, right? They're not with us anymore. They put in the portal, and so the spigot would stop. We have those kind of things, but students will go with where they want to go. And I think I just read that Oregon, I believe, signed a kid in the portal and just went back in the portal.
Correct.
Right? Who knows?
There for a week.
Who knows? Did they have a penalty? Did they not? We have a spring portal.
I think he's headed to Cal, if I'm not mistaken.
I think that might be right. So everybody's dealing with these moments where you're like, okay, that's it. Now I can hear the people. I can hear the guy that follows you on the radio, my dear friend Spence, say, well, then collectively bargain. There's an argument for that.
Sure.
Right? Because if you collectively bargain, you can start getting into these matters in a more robust way. And I got to think we'll get there. I think we'll get there. We're just not there today.
Do you have any idea of a timeline on that level of professionalization, is the term I always use?
I think the first year of the settlement will be really eye-opening to see if we're more of a level playing field in terms of that. And I think when there's more comfort around that, I think we'll start, talking about what that could look like. I do think employment has got some benefits, but I think it's got some real tough things too for students in this environment. There could be some federal legislation that could kind of walk down the middle of that. We'll have to see. But I think it's going to take a year or two for the settlement to really kick in for us to say, okay, now let's take this next step. But anything that could bring a little bit more sanity to the whole thing, certainly I would support.
Apropos of, I guess, almost nothing, except he is one of the most important players that has come through the Utah football program, arguably ever. Cam Rising is radio silent at the moment. We don't know what his plans are for the future. We see guys in his position joining coaching staffs or opting for the NFL. Or have you talked with Cam? Do you know what his plans are?
Yeah, the last time I spoke to Cam was at the end of the season. We had a great conversation. He was really enthusiastic about his surgery that he had, from the ASU game injury. He had a really good disposition to him. It's been really hard for him, you can imagine. He works so hard to get back, and then the Baylor incident, which was really tough, and then to get back and then get hurt. I think it was the second play.
Yeah, the second or third play of the game.
Second or third play. It was just so unfortunate. So I have not spoken to him since. I know some of the football coaches have, but I think with Cam's work here and the amazing things he helped us accomplish, he'll go down as one of the greats. And it's been a tough couple years for him. Injuries that he had no control of, and we have to give him a lot of grace for that. But I know I'm here to support him in all ways possible, and we'll see what his next move is.
There's an old adage in sports and in combat sports, it certainly rang true. You learn more in your losses sometimes than you do in your victories. You might learn more in a season that didn't go the way you wanted it to than you would in a season like one of those Pac-12 championship years. In the Deseret News piece, you talked about some of the lessons you yourself learned. Just what did you learn through this football season before we move on from football? What did you learn about yourself, about this program, about Kyle Whittingham, about whatever in this less than ideal year for Utah football?
Well, I think it was a good reminder that what this football program has accomplished over these last few years, and I would even say more than few years, championships, being in so many championship games, being in the hunt till November, even in the 23 season, we were in the hunt till second week of November. I think you just can't take anything for granted. It's an incredibly hard thing to do, to be in the hunt late in the season, and then in our case, pop through twice and win conference championships with some unbelievable teams in it. So it's a reminder of how much work and effort that takes. It's a good chance to always pull the car back in the garage and tinker. Not being in a bowl is unacceptable for this program, but I got to tell you, quite candidly, that I think it gave some time for everyone to reflect. I think it gave our chance to really focus on roster. I talked to some people at ASU. The AD there's a really good friend, and he talked about last year, when they won 3 games. And they obviously had a coach that was wrapping up his first year. They were really able to keenly focus on a lot of different things, and obviously they had a great year. So I think we've used that time really, really, really well. As far as me, I would say this. I think there was times that I got too emotional. I think that was a great example after the BYU game. I was really frustrated, obviously, with some things going on in that game, and I let my emotions, I think, get the best of me, and certainly had time to reflect on that. I think every leader should. I have high expectations of my staff and my coaches, and I need to do the same of myself. So you live and learn, as a leader in that. And I felt the next morning after that game, that the comments took away from a really hard-earned win by BYU. And Kalani is a really good friend. And so I reached out to him and I expressed that. And certainly Jay, who I've gotten to know really well, expressed that. But also to Tom, I wanted him to know that was inappropriate. And the same thing with Commissioner Yormark. And so again, you live and you learn, but I think it was a reminder to me that even I, as the leader, and you can't have that happen, was just really disappointed, and you got to handle those things better. So now we're fully ready to go for 25. Spring ball will be here before we can blink, and it'll be really exciting to see what happens.
How often do you communicate with Tom Homo? You guys are 40 miles apart from one another. He does a great job. You do a great job. Like when, they steal a player on the football team, or you call him like, hey, what are you guys doing down there? What kind of relationship do you guys have?
You mean the I-15 corridor of, depending if you're going north and south? I mean, I could say we got, in soccer and volleyball. I mean, it just goes across the whole way. Listen, there's a Big 12 meeting this morning, and I was talking to Tom. We talk quite frequently, and we know there's a lot of swirl anytime a student athlete, if it's a high-profile sport, it even gets more so. And a couple of years ago, we got the same when a few of theirs came here. So
right.
you just kind of roll with it, and you really focus on yourself and your program, and that's all I can do as a leader, make sure we're at our very best, the best environment, our coaches to keep those that want to stay. But it is the nature of the beast. I know. I was talking to someone at UCLA the other day. They've had a tremendous USC-UCLA exchange of coaches and players over the last few years. So we're not unique in that way. It certainly adds a little spice to the rivalry. That's for sure.
Yeah, it's going to make it that much more interesting as the game is back, which I love, and I've talked about a lot on the show. I got to do at least a little bit of justice to you're trying to help this football team turn things around. Try to do the same thing with men's basketball, trying to maintain the success of Utah women's basketball, and you had to do it with an in-season coaching change. We'll start on the women's side here. Did you know instantly when Lynn Roberts said, hey, I got to take this opportunity, who you were going with as her replacement?
Yeah, I think, first of all, Lynn was so great in keeping me in the loop. It wasn't a tremendously drawn-out process, but, it was hard for me to sit here and not be really proud of her, in LA Sparks, arguably one of the top franchises in the professional space. And so she gave me time to really think about this if she was going to take the job. Gavin's just so good. And I've often felt that if Lynn ever did decide to leave, that this would make sense. And so we were able to make that pretty quickly, Charmel Green and I, who oversees women's basketball. And I've been so pleased. I mean, last night was a tough night. Not sure what happened there, but, we've won 7 in a row going into last night. Incredible road win at Iowa State last week in front of a full house. And so it's a team that is just firing on all cylinders. And Gavin's done a great job, and really excited to see where that season goes.
On the men's side, the growing pains are there. We knew that when you take a basketball program into the Big 12, which is one of the best basketball conferences in the country, there are going to be some growing pains. So far winless in Big 12 play. We all love Craig. He was very successful at previous stops. Has not yet found the magic mix, it doesn't seem, at the University of Utah. And just your thoughts on the best way to support that effort. When I was a kid, Utah was a basketball school. Now I love that we're a football school now, but this environment, this community can be both.
Yeah, I mean, listen, we need to win in men's basketball. There's no question. You alluded to the history of success here. It's been tough, and Craig's a really good coach. I think this environment in basketball has been difficult for any coach to handle. Outside of some of the blue bloods who are just going to recycle what they do, and there's probably less than a handful of those. Last year I thought, with some significant injuries where we were at the top of the league, and then we kind of fell down as we lost some folks. Got into postseason play in the NIT, had some really good victories over Iowa and others, got to the Final Four. Unfortunately, just like anyone in college basketball, we lost a lot of key folks for various reasons. But I was really pleased, and still remain so, of the student athletes that came in who had done some really good stuff. I think we've got 11 players who can play at this level, at a high level, I should say. And so Craig's just trying to find that formula to get it going. But, listen, you got a certain amount of quad 1, quad 2 opportunities in the preseason. We weren't able to get those wins, which makes it difficult to get in the NCAA tournament. But the thing about the Big 12 is it is very difficult, and we certainly have faced, 2 of the top teams really on the road, which is very difficult, and in tough games ahead. You're going to have more opportunities. One breath it's challenging, the other breath it's opportunity. But right now with that program, just leaning in, supporting. I'll be at practice right when we're done here, and making sure they have what they need to go forward. But this team, this program has got to be living in the postseason. That's my expectations. I know that's what Craig believes too, and I know that's what our fans, believe too. I just would encourage fans to come out and support. I understand we need to win more, but I think they can help us win. We got another great game on Saturday versus Oklahoma State. It's at 5 o'clock. It's perfect time to come out and watch. The women are playing before that, so we have a doubleheader, just a great opportunity to come out and watch. But I know we need to win in basketball, and Craig does too.
I remember when realignment was happening, and I was doing Pac-12 radio at the time, and we were talking about how much it really makes sense. Yes, for football, the travel is what it is. For basketball, for soccer, for gymnastics, for the non-revenue producing sports, where you got to have 2 competitions in 1 week, and now you've got a coast-to-coast conference. the logistics and the travel and things like that, is it more challenging than you thought it was going to be? Is it about where you thought it would be? Because it's not the Pac-12 footprint anymore, which was very convenient, very easy, at least from a fan standpoint. Now sometimes you got to go spend a week in Orlando and play a couple of games there. How has it been managing that?
Well, I think the outlier trips, as you just alluded to, are certainly challenging. We're not gonna say otherwise. I mean, I do like the fact that if you go play West Virginia, you're also gonna have Cincinnati on the way or the way back, and that's been the case in most of the Olympic sports, and also we're seeing that in basketball. Same with kind of Houston, UCF, in that way. So there's some things that have mitigated. Look, some trips are shorter than what they used to be. What we're all used to, though, is going to one place in the Pac-12 and busing maybe, and you're only on a plane from back and forth. Well, now, we're seeing a little different. Now we're getting involved in this Tuesday rotation or Wednesday rotation and weekends. So wherever you're going, I think everyone's getting accustomed to that. What I have heard, too, from our students, and I had a chance to talk to some women's basketball players when we got back from Iowa State, these atmospheres are the real deal. They're intense, whether it's men's basketball, women's basketball. We saw it in volleyball. And students love, you remember, you want to play in front of crowds. You work your tails off. You just want to play. And I think I think fans may scratch their head on that. What about getting heckled and all that? You love to play in that. And I think it's bringing out the best in a lot of our teams. And, I'm not being dismissive of the Pac-12 in that way, but we'd go on the road sometimes in certain schools and there'd be nobody there. So I think this is a different dynamic that they're pretty excited about. But, let's look at the women's basketball team. They had a really tough game Sunday. Got back at 2 a.m, and they've got a top 15 team we had to play last night. So you no excuses, Gavin would say, but you could tell our legs were a little slower than normal. So there's some adaptation that we're going to be working on that. But by and by, I think it's pretty much a push.
Before I let you go, Red Rocks still looking great. You've got a baseball stadium being built on campus, the fan experience at Rice-Eccles, improvements happening there. Take it wherever you want because I want to respect your time.
No, I appreciate it. Yeah, let's start with the Red Rocks, who I just we're talking to as they were getting on the bus to get out to a great nationally televised ABC meet against Oklahoma and others. LSU, I think, will be there, and so they're going to go into to one of the best meets of the whole year. Carly was not thrilled with the performance last week. Great crowd. I think we had something like 11,000 in there. It was awesome, but it was a great still start for a lot of freshmen to kind of see this is big time stage that they're on. I think they'll be better for it. So I'm really excited about them. You mentioned baseball. If you go down Guardsman, you can start seeing the ballpark literally come out of the ground. They're working on the dugouts now. It's right on schedule. The light winter has allowed Layton Construction to really stay on top of it. Part of that not only will be a place for them to play, but we'll have a whole practice facility for them with multiple bays and, across the street from Eccles football where they eat. So it's just a fantastic, we won't play in there this year, but we got lucky to be able to still play in Smith's in the last year. So we got a lot of really good stuff going on there. Like I said, the grad rates, of graduating 95% of our student athletes is just remarkable. And that's what kind of fuels me every day. I wish we'd win every game. We try like heck to do that, but it's not always going to happen. But where's your values? Graduation, community service, over 1,500 hours this last year. So we're humming on all cylinders. Appreciate everybody's support and excited to see what's next.
Penn State or Notre Dame tonight?
It's funny. My son asked me that same question, and I'm going to turn around and ask it you. I tell you, Penn State's looked really good, but Notre Dame had a different gear there last week, although I think I read that they have the flu.
A little virus ran through
which I know really hurt Michael Jordan in the history of this city. But I think listen, I will just say on this, it's been incredible to watch these playoffs go. I think they've been a resounding success. The ADs were shown this morning, and this is so counterintuitive to what I would have thought. The other bowl games,
I saw that as well.
The ratings are at 5-6 years high, and I sit here and think, that was going to be the death of bowl games. I know attendance and those things are a problem and players playing, but college football continues to be the beast. And I will be interesting about expansion. I'll be at the CFP as a former member of the committee. We always go out there and get together and meet and talk, and I'll learn a lot next weekend. But I think this number might be right. I don't know what you feel. We'll see, but I think this 12 is probably about right. I talked to some leadership at Penn State. I don't feel bad for them, but this is a grind. This
Sure.
is an absolute grind for these teams.
Yeah, it is. And, the reward, if you can win that national championship, is immortality in college football. So probably worth it, but
Absolutely.
it's been phenomenal.
We'll take that grind.
Yeah, let's look forward to that in 2025. Mark, I really do appreciate you allowing me to abuse your time here. Thanks for coming down. Let's do this a little more often.
Thanks, Sean. Appreciate you.
That's Mark Harlan, Utah Athletic Director. We'll double up the breaks here, come back, talk about some of the things we covered with Mark. Sean O'Connell Show, ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM.
interceptions at times. You know, I can go down a list of things I'm not very good at, but playing football I was really good at.
Well, from
for
football,
a few years.
the athletic thing, like I don't know what it's. I don't know what it's like to be married to you, but playing football, you're good at that. Like from probably the time you were a kindergartner.
Yeah. So I felt, here's a good example. When I got released by the Ravens and watching the film of that season, being my 12th year, I felt I was still an upper echelon safety. Yeah, the productivity wasn't there, but if you watch it, I just didn't get many ops to get many plays on the ball where my interceptions were where they should be, you know. But we were on the number one defense. I still was motivated. So, yeah, Rams signed me to a 2-year deal. Midway through that season, was I playing bad? No. Was I playing amazing? No. I was just a solid player. And for me, that's just not good enough. And two, my heart wasn't in it because I was alone. My family was in San Diego. I was in L.A. It just wasn't the recipe for success, and it's not why I played, right? And that became apparent after the season that let's go make the most of it. You have to be aware. You have to, I think a lot of guys, they're holding on because they're scared of the next step, next journey for them. They may not have an idea what they're going to do next, but they want to hold on with me. I do what I was doing. Yeah, took dinners every night.
I always ask you a 49ers question. They need a defensive coordinator. Robert Saleh is on the unemployment line. He was unbelievable as a defensive coordinator for the 49ers. Can you repair that? Can you put that back together? Because it's not like he left on bad terms. He left for a head coaching opportunity, which anybody would do. Would he be the right hire? Yeah, I don't like hearing you say it, but I agree with you. I think the window did close in a very unimpressive fashion. I thought you could go out in a blaze of glory this year, win it, and then the window would close, but they didn't even make the playoffs, so that sucked. On a much more serious note, I know you guys are not close to the Fires, but you played with the Rams. You got a lot of friends and people close to you that are in LA. Everyone cool? Everyone get out and all that? Yeah, scary stuff, and hopefully everyone stays safe. As always, I appreciate you joining me on the show. Love you, dude. Thank you. Eric Weddle, Utah football legend, I think, eventual NFL Hall of Famer. I love the idea that he can tell he doesn't want to play for Ryan Day just by looking at Ryan Day on TV. That's one of my favorite things that Eric Weddle has ever said to us here on the show. All right, lots to get to, and then we'll do some crosstalk with Spence Checketts. I asked him about the head coaching vacancies in the NFL right now. We're going to figure out which one of these is the best situation. It's the Sean O'Connell Show on ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM.
That was hilarious. But honestly, I've had the same kind of feeling. He can be so cheesy.
I think, it makes sense to me. He brought up that the fight, the Michigan fight.
That too.
That was also because you could tell he was just like,
Yeah. In a way, like I remember him just saying nonchalantly and then kind of casually, "What's happening?"
yeah,
Like you could see the cameras fix up. What's happening?
yeah. He's just like,
What do you mean? What's happening? They're fighting.
they're fighting. Your
Yeah.
guys.
The other team's trying to embarrass you after they embarrassed you on the field.
Yes.
Like, what do you mean? What's that? And the Lou Holtz thing. The one time he really tries to be like, I'm gonna make a strong statement for our program, and it just came off.
And it's going at Lou Holtz.
Yeah.
Back up the boards for Keller. Sergachev. Here's Keller. Cooley scores!
TNT Sports gave us that sound. Logan Cooley did score last night, the only goal for the Utah Hockey Club. They lost 4-1 to the defending Stanley Cup champions, the Florida Panthers. Kenny Albert on the call for that one. I think it was Stenlin last night got his Stanley Cup ring, and then he got in a fight. If he would have won the game, it would have been the trifecta for a hockey player, right? You get a trophy or a ring, you get a fight, and you get a win. That's all hockey players really need in their lives. Unfortunately, the Utah Hockey Club not able to produce the offense again. Look, Florida's they're a good team. That is not the litmus test for you right now for Utah Hockey Club. That is not the level of franchise you're necessarily chasing at this moment. I told you on the show yesterday, I mean it. That was the start of a long homestand. The next 5 are very, very winnable for this Utah Hockey Club team. So if you have an opportunity to get out there this weekend, next week, might be the time to do it if you're playing the percentages on hoping you can be there at the Delta Center for a victory. Also, I don't know if they sold out as with the same speed that the adult jerseys sold out, but this week the youth official team Utah Hockey Club jerseys were in stock at the team store. So if you had a kid that you were waiting to buy one of those for, you were able to get that this week, I hope, because, man, those things fly off the shelves. Also, I haven't had a chance to read it yet because I just came across it during the show, James. But Belle Frazier, our Utah Hockey Club insider, who's rapidly becoming a favorite here on the show, she does such an incredible job. She just put out a piece in the Trib about the branding, Yeti or not, whether or not it's going to be the Utah Yeti.
Yeti or not, here it comes.
Okay,
I love it. You know that's what it was, though, right?
Yeah. I think that's probably what she was going for.
Hey, she hooked me with it.
So there's that. So, go check that out. I wanted to use this segment here to remind you, ESPN 792.1 FM have the cash kickoff going on. You have a shot to win $1,000 cash to pay your bills. Text FUNDS, F-U-N-D-S, to 508-777-1000 for a chance to win. 508-777-1000. Text the word FUNDS. F-U-N-D-S. This is a nationwide contest on ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. I asked Eric Weddle which of the head coaching vacancies in the NFL is the best one, which one is most appealing. There's been some breaking news today on that front. Tom Telesco, the Raiders GM, has been fired. He's been removed from his duties. There's a couple ways you can look at that, right? If Bill Belichick is a serious candidate, then he doesn't need a GM. If Deion Sanders is a serious candidate, he probably has an idea of what kind of GM he wants to work with. Might be talking about sort of a package deal situation right there. I don't know if either of those guys are front of mind for the Raiders organization right now. It doesn't necessarily, you don't have to infer that because Telesco was not doing an adequate job of making sure that this roster, although give him credit for the Bowers pick, felt like kind of a no-brainer. But Tom Telesco out. So interviews happening. Reportedly, the Iowa State head football coach, Matt Campbell, is potentially interviewing for the Bears vacancy. Regionally, that makes a lot of sense. The big question for me, if that comes to fruition, because Matt Campbell might have reached kind of the ceiling in Ames. I don't know that you're really going to be a perpetual contender in Ames, although they have a ton of love and support for their athletic program and their football team, and certainly what they've done with their basketball teams on both the men's and women's side has been very impressive. But, he's probably maxing out kind of the pay that he's ever going to get at Iowa State, and maybe reading the writing on the wall that even if he wins a conference championship, even if he makes a college football playoff, anything beyond that might be a little bit unrealistic for a team like Iowa State. If he goes to the Bears, does Rocco Becht stay at Iowa State? because Rocco Becht is one of the best young quarterbacks in the country. And he would immediately have the opportunity, obviously, to leave, transfer portal, free agency, so to speak. He would be a guy that everybody would be interested in. If Matt Campbell leaves Iowa State, they're going to have to overpay or hire the perfect person to keep Rocco Becht in Ames.
Yeah, that's definitely the thing to watch. And yeah, he would be coveted by just about every program in the country, all the big programs in the country too.
Just to refresh you, sophomore quarterback, 3,500 yards, 25 touchdowns, 9 interceptions this year for Rocco Becht.
He was good in just about every game except for the Big 12 title game. Basically, he was a good game. Even his losses in the regular season had standout performances.
His completion percentage left something to be desired this year, but for his career, he's hitting about 60% of his passes, and that touchdown interception ratio has been pretty consistent for him. He also, he's athletic enough that he's got the ability to run. He gave you 8 touchdowns with his legs this year, 318 yards on 98 carries. So, timely with his runs, but he's got everybody would want him.
My question is, what do you think? Do you see Matt Campbell as possibly a successful NFL coach? Because it's hard to see a guy that we only know at one level. It's hard to predict. Yeah, I can see them being good at the next level, but I kind of see him as college coach guy.
I do too. They're gonna kick the tires on it. They're gonna interview him. We'll see what happens with that. One thing about the Bears that I don't understand is that the Bears never seem to have the same kind of, whether it's real or perceived, when you're talking about LA teams, when you're talking about New York teams, they very clearly want coaches that have a little bit of something beyond just coaching ability. They want a guy who's got the right look. They want a guy who's got the right swagger. They want a guy who they know is going to be able to survive the bullets from the media and the big-time media market. I feel like the Bears as a franchise just miss that boat every single time. Like going all the way back to to Lovie Smith maybe was the last one where you're just like, no, like that guy, that makes sense that dude is the coach of the Bears. They missed the boat. They could have hired Jim Harbaugh.
Another guy I was just thinking of, you could picture being successful with the Bears.
Right.
You could picture him being successful anywhere because he's shown that he can be, but especially the Bears.
Hindsight is always 20/20, but go back and just dig up any of the reactions to the Eberflus hire, and it's just not enough. Chicago is this huge city, the city of broad shoulders, right? Isn't that what they call it? The Windy City? That never conducts itself that way as a football franchise, and it drives me insane. Like, get a bunch of 85 Bears, get Brian Urlacher, get Mike Brown, get these guys and put them on a committee and have them pick a coach. Kind of on the I'm probably feeling this way because we just had a conversation with Eric Weddle. Like, give me a guy that you look at. You just see a picture of him. You don't have to know him. You put him on the TV and you're just like, yep, that guy could coach. At least have him check that box. Because they don't do that in Chicago. And you need to do that right now with the personnel they've got. Caleb Williams strikes me in the interactions we've had with him and how much we saw of him at USC. And you probably don't know a lot of these people yet, James, because you're not around kids as often as I'm around kids. Until you have kids, you're not around kids that often. But there's these little kids, right, that you get into like that 3, 4, 5-year-old range, and there's always this kid who's like charismatic, like funny, but kind of a brat. And if you don't handle them the right way, they're a nightmare. But if you do handle them the right way, if you show them, it's kind of like that Cesar Millan dog situation. If you just show them who's boss, they're also smart. They're clever little kids, and they're just like, okay, I can't mess around with any of this stuff because that person, that's not my, like, soft parenting mom, or that's not my grandma who lets me get away with everything. Like, this person is going to be like, don't do that, right? And then they're a dream. That's what Caleb Williams strikes me as. If you push on him the right way, I feel like Caleb Williams is probably a great person to have around, a great player to have around. I think he loves the game of football, even though he has interest outside of football. He's clearly incredibly talented. But if you hire the wrong guy to coach Caleb Williams, I think he becomes one of those little nightmare brat kids where he's like super talented, he's highly paid, he's good looking, and he just stops doing the film study, stops listening to you. He's the locker room lawyer who's turning everyone against you. That's how Caleb Williams strikes me.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that, and I love the comparison too. Like, so I thought of a few just off the top of my head that I've known, not necessarily kids anymore, but who used to be that way, people I grew up with.
You grew up with these kids in school.
You're like, when you are not being a brat, you're actually really cool to be around.
Yeah.
You bring so much to the table as a friend or whatever the relationship is. But when no one's challenging you, you're the worst to be around. Yeah. And there's always I see that as Caleb Williams too.
There was always the teacher that was just like, oh, no, shut up. You're not doing that.
Yeah.
And that kid, the best grade that kid ever got was in that class.
Yeah.
Where that teacher is the one that's just like, I know that you're smart. I know that you're the class clown. I know you're funny. I know you're charismatic.
But I don't care.
But, like, just save that for an appropriate time. Yeah. Stop being a turd right now.
Well, and neither one of us were those kids. We were perfect. We were perfect kids, right?
Yes. I was a perfect child.
No, here's the thing. That's another reason why, not just because you look at Matt Campbell and you feel like, okay, that guy's college coach, not NFL coach. That's another reason why I'm not convinced that Matt Campbell is that guy. Maybe I'm way off base with that. Maybe if he gets the opportunity to prove me wrong. But I just don't think he's that guy. I think that guy would have been Jim Harbaugh. That guy would have been Sean Payton, for example. Not that he was available when they were hiring their last coach, but that kind of a coach, right?
Yeah, and to be fair to owners and GMs, I think it's probably so difficult to figure out what an NFL team is going to respond to, because you probably saw this week where Justin Herbert, and this is not the first time we've heard the story, but Justin Herbert was kind of asked about Jim Harbaugh and how he won over the team, and Justin Herbert tells this hilarious story about Jim Harbaugh on like the first team meeting, told his team that he remembered the day he was born, that Jim Harbaugh himself has memories of being born. And so everyone's just like, okay, this guy's a lunatic. And for whatever reason, they respond to it positively, because the opposite could very clearly happen.
Well,
right?
Alex Smith has told the stories most recently, where I heard it most recently was on the Dan Patrick Show a couple months ago. He told his stories of like when he first got to San Francisco, when Jim first got to San Francisco, Alex was an impending free agent, and he was still, he was decided, I'm going to go to the team facility to work out until my key card doesn't work, kind of thing. And so he was showing up there every day working out, and Jim would be there too, and they started playing Pepper, like quarterback Pepper, trying to hit the goalposts. And it's like, this is a guy who's 40, 50 something years old.
Yeah.
And he thinks he can hang with a current NFL quarterback in quarterback drills.
And he would do the wild stuff, like where on a cold day, you know how football players do this corny thing where on a super cold game they come out to warm up shirtless.
Yeah.
Like Jim Harbaugh would come out shirtless, and people they love it though. Players seem to love it, at least for a time, and then maybe they get sick of him. But they like, if you're an NFL GM or owner, you might look at that and just be like, these guys are going to eat that dude alive, because why is he taking his shirt off? He's got like dad bod now. Why is he like wearing cleats at practice? Why does Jim Harbaugh wear cleats at practice? He does. That's something that you could very easily rip apart a coach for.
Yeah, like you could do what Weddle did when we were talking about Ryan Day and be like, yeah, I couldn't play for that guy.
But instead, with Jim Harbaugh, maybe because he's got a quality resume, maybe because he played long enough in the league that you got to begrudgingly be like, well, look, he hung around in the NFL for long enough. He must know what he's doing. I don't know what it is, but players respond better to Jim Harbaugh than they would to other people who did the same crazy
Listen,
stuff.
I would love to hate Jim Harbaugh. He's a Michigan guy. He brought Michigan back to prominence. But I've always loved Jim Harbaugh. Like he just has that the indescribable quality, quirkiness, I guess, that wins you over. Even as a football fan, even as someone who watches football is not a fan of the team he coaches, he still wins you over.
He's a strange man, but in an endearing kind of way. Okay, so before we take a break, what is of the 6 openings, head coaching vacancies, what's the one that when James Peterson's phone rings off the hook and they're like, "Hey, we need you." You got all 6 as an option. What do you think's the best situation?
Well, I don't think I can talk about that because I'm in talks with some of these teams.
You're currently in negotiations. That would be the all-time upward mobility. That would be the biggest leap.
The guy who never played football in his life except for like elementary school flag football. Yeah, that would be amazing. No, of the openings, remind me. So I'm thinking of Raiders. I'm thinking of Jets. I'm thinking of
Jets, Giants, Raiders,
Patriots.
Who am I missing?
Jaguars, and
Jets, Giants, Raiders, Patriots.
Oh, and Saints.
Jaguars, Saints. Yeah.
Probably maybe the Giants, and not necessarily for any roster reasons or anything. Some of those other teams have better rosters, but seemed to me like, well, first off, it's the other New York team.
Yeah.
But also, it seemed to me like that's a successful franchise that even though the cupboard's bare as far as a lot of roster talent, you could that's a franchise I would feel fairly confident in rebuilding.
Okay. I'm not touching that one. Even though I don't think the Mars are bad owners, I'm not touching that one because the Commanders are going to be really good.
True. Eagles aren't going anywhere.
So
Cowboys are going to have a resurgence at some point. That's true.
The Cowboys are always going to suck forever, I think.
The Jags' best roster, I think out of the group.
The Jags might be the right pick.
Maybe it's just the stink of how bad that they've been traditionally that makes me go, I don't want to touch them.
The Raiders, again, coaches don't think this way, but the Raiders, you've got to deal with the Broncos getting a lot better. You've got to deal with the Chargers getting a lot better. You got to deal with the Chiefs being the Chiefs. That even if you're a good coach and you draft incredibly well, that Raiders job is hard.
Yeah. And the Jags, AFC South is notoriously mid. So
correct. I think Jags might be the one.
Jags might be, even though you're dealing with C.J. Stroud and the Texans, who are at some point seem like they're going to be a power, but who knows?
Jags or Saints?
Yeah, Saints, AFC, NFC South too. The South divisions notoriously,
isn't that weird?
Solid to bad.
In the South, in college sports, the South dominates softball, dominates basketball right now.
It just doesn't mean as much in the NFL.
In the NFL football just means less in the South. All right. Got to take a quick break. We'll come back with some trivia. 2 tickets to the Utah Auto Expo at the Mountain America Expo Center in Sandy, January 17th through the 20th. If you can answer what will certainly be a real brain buster coming up in topical trivia next. And we'll talk with Spence Checketts if he's in the building. It's the Sean O'Connell Show on ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. Sean O'Connell Show, wrapping things up here on a Thursday. College football playoff game tonight, Penn State, Notre Dame. It's going to be a fun one. I have a trivia question for you. 2 tickets to the Utah Auto Expo, January 17th through the 20th at where'd it go? Mountain America. At Mountain America
Sandy.
Expo Center in Sandy. 2 tickets to the Utah Auto Expo. If you can tell me for the Utah women's basketball team last night, who lost, unfortunately, their first Big 12 game of the season. Leading scorer in that game for your Lady Runnin' Utes was fill in the blank. 877-353-0700. Who led Utah scorers in their loss last night at the Huntsman Center? 2 tickets to the Utah Auto Expo. Speaking of tickets to Utah games, 33986 to a Runnin' Utes home game. You can win a pair of tickets if you text Utes to 33986. Win a pair of tickets to a Runnin' Utes home game. This Saturday, they've got an Oklahoma State matchup. That might be their best shot so far to win a conference.
Sean
playoff
Mooney thinks
basketball.
so. He
Sean
all
Mooney
but
said that.
guaranteed a win.
He didn't all
On the
but
walk
guarantee
Sean's
a win. He guaranteed
segment.
a win.
Yeah.
Sean Mooney said they're getting this one, so I'm going to trust him. The Drive with Spence Checketts is coming up next, and he joins me now in the studio. We'll see if he's ready for the – I was going to say we'll see if his microphone is on.
That's the fair. You know what? We should start setting a bet every time I come in. My first sentence will actually go out on air. Because as we continue to say, my one New Year's wish for 2025 as a sports talk radio host is to have control over the microphones in the studio.
My one New Year's wish is for you to have realistic goals and to be reasonable.
Yeah,
Okay?
I can't argue with that. That's well said. I've got a question for you right off the top because I was thinking about this last night. Your boy doesn't have a great relationship with sleep. Doing the best I can. The mind, man. I'm one of those that lays down and boom, I am bombarded.
Really?
Oh, yeah, right away.
See, you strike me as a guy who just nothing going on up there.
Well,
So-
I appreciate that. That's, I honestly, I envy people that lay down and it's blank.
Yeah.
Like that's my, if you're talking about a New Year's wish, that's my wish.
Okay.
Lay down and nothing goes on.
Okay. I don't want to derail whatever you were going to say, but like what is keeping you awake at night? Is it old mistakes? Is it what's coming up tomorrow? Like,
Yes, and yes. Keep
Oh,
going.
okay.
Keep
All
going.
right.
What else? Random thoughts that make no sense. Yes.
Why is a hippopotamus milk pink? I don't
Correct.
understand.
Or, whatever it is. It's all of it.
Okay.
And then sometimes a moment of brilliance will strike.
Okay.
Few and far between. But I lay down to go to bed and boom, universe takes over and my head is all over the place, past, future. I have some tools, breath work and such to get back into the present moment. We can talk about that later.
All right, Wim Hof.
But anyway, last night, after my cold plunge, didn't take one last night, I couldn't sleep, so I fired up our boy Shane Gillis.
Nice.
And I've seen it.
funny.
I've seen it probably 100 times by now.
Beautiful dogs.
Beautiful Dogs, Netflix, if you haven't seen it.
It's funny.
And, I love stand-up comedy, and I love to find new stand-up comedy that's good. But sometimes you got to slay the beast and watch 4 or 5 that are horrible, and finally you stumble on one that's good. So I'm like, I know Shane's good. I can't sleep. I'll laugh. I'll feel better. Go to bed. And you're a guy that's interesting to me because and we've talked about it, you just saw mixed martial arts, and you're like, I'm going to do that one day.
Yeah.
And you did it one day, and you won a belt, and you won $1 million.
Uh-huh.
That's a really cool thing. What's one thing, not MMA at this point, that you feel like you could do if you put the time in? Because I honestly think I could be a stand-up comic if I put the time in.
I've written a tight 5 for stand-up comedy.
Come on.
I've never had the you-know-what to actually do it.
And it takes a lot of you-know-what.
And my ego is so fragile if people don't laugh at me. That's the thing. That's like the most offensive thing to me when I'm trying to be funny. And people don't laugh.
Yeah.
I'm just like, oh, this is
You're
the worst.
drowning.
Like,
Yes.
if you tell me I'm fat and I'm ugly and whatever, I'm like, I don't care. If you tell me I'm not funny, I am hurt to my core.
Yeah, you feel like you're drowning. And I got to be honest, I really enjoy making people laugh. I always have my entire life. I was the annoying kid in class. I was the class clown. The teacher couldn't stand. And all I wanted to do is make my friends laugh in class.
Okay.
It's like, because I love it. I've always enjoyed seeing people laugh, hearing people laugh. Every time I watch a stand-up comedy routine, I'm like, you know what? I think I could do that.
We should do that this year. We should do that together. We should do, like, I'll open for you, you open for me. We'll both do 5 at a local spot.
We'll go down to Keith Stubbs, our guy.
To Wise Guys.
Yeah, we'll go to Wise Guys. Keith, if you're listening, can we get can you carve out some time?
We'll do it
for a couple of sports talk radio idiots.
We'll open for Rogan or whatever. No. So you're talking about something I think I could do now, or something I think I would have been good at if I had started doing it when I needed to?
Either way, because honestly, whenever I commuted to Los Angeles for work for a year, and I would go to the Comedy Store and I would watch people workshop routines, including Nikki Glaser. I remember watching her before anybody knew who she was, and now she's blown up. I mean, that during that time, it was like Whitney Cummings,
also amazing,
Anthony Jeselnik, Chris D'Elia.
Don't love him.
Are we allowed to say Chris D'Elia's name on?
He's uncanceled.
Okay, Chris D'Elia. Chris was actually, but you know who struck me of the group I was watching that year was Andrew Santino.
Oh, love me some Cheeto Santino.
Awesome, right? But I mean, I'm watching, because if you work at the store, behind the desk, selling merch, or at front, ripping the tickets, or at security, you don't get paid, but they give you a chance to go on stage, right?
Oh, wow.
So you're watching, the guy comes
it's like college football, unpaid labor? Wow.
A little bit.
Wow.
You're watching like Santino, and the dude comes up, he's like, here's your burger.
Yeah.
And then you're halfway through your burger, and the dude who gave you the burger is suddenly up on stage, and you're watching him workshop some material. And 90% of it is crap.
Sure.
Because these are people just starting out. And as Louis C.K. says, in my opinion, potentially the greatest of all time, have the courage to suck at something until you're great at it.
Yeah.
And that's what all these people are doing. But every time I watch it, I have this weird thing in my mind. I'm like, I think I might be able to do that.
You might be able to.
I don't know.
We should give it a shot. So I think this is probably incredible. I think that if I had taken that left turn, I think that I could have, like, I think I'm a really good cook. I think I could have, like, an amazing restaurant or something.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I really think I could have been, like, I don't know. I could have been Bobby Flay.
I still think there's time for that.
And you know what I really want to do, and I think I would be good at?
What's that?
And I should probably just go in and tender my resignation and actually pursue this dream. Right now there's not a good David Attenborough replacement. The guy who's going to show you the wildlife of the world and all these crazy exotic locales. I don't have the pipes to really narrate it the way that he does.
I think you've got some pipes on
However, I have a passion for that I think I could be a successful wildlife show host. Is that a weird one?
No, not at all. I just hope our sales staff is listening right now. We have so many synergies going on. I'm thinking of an OC cooking corner. Every Friday after one of your segments, do 5. Oh, Austin's here. Oh, see, I'm full of ideas today. I actually have an idea for Austin after we're done here. OC cooking show. I'll just riff for 5 minutes. I mean, it's kind of what we do anyway.
Sort of.
Yeah, but we're not as funny as those people.
Yeah.
I don't know, because you're a guy that strikes me like, you want to write a book, you write a book.
I did, yeah.
Right? You wrote a couple. You want to fight. You go fight and you win a belt. Like, that's a really cool mentality to have, because I'll give you another one. I'm never doing this, just so you know. Because to your point about, like, the courage, I can play the guitar. I've written a few songs. It's for me and my dog only. Because I don't have the guts to do. No way. I will never play the guitar in front of anybody. But the fact that you have had that attitude, like, no, I'm just going to go do it. I was thinking last night, I'm like, I wonder if Sean's ever considered, his answer for me potentially trying stand-up comedy at some point.
No, yeah, that's it's up there. I'm embarrassment proof, which is not a good thing all the time. But, I get over being embarrassed very quickly.
You have to in this job, yeah.
Not having someone laugh at you, though, it would take me longer.
Yes.
So I think that's one that would scare me too much. Kind of like people, I know my wife has a beautiful, ridiculously amazing singing voice. Won't do it.
Yeah.
Won't sing in front of me even.
Oh, really?
The only reason I know this is because I've caught her singing to herself. I've caught her singing to our children, and I'm just like, why is this not a thing you pursued in your life? And, of course, I know her well enough to know exactly why, because she gets embarrassed by everything.
Yeah.
But I'm just like, why don't you have that thing that I have where you're just like, you know what, screw it, I'm going to try. when it like she has an unreal voice, but not everyone's as lacks self-awareness like I do.
Well, there's also a certain amount of vulnerability, right? Because people are going to judge you. And to your point, you have to get over that. One of the big blessings about doing this for a living is you get over it quickly. If you don't get over it quickly, you don't last in this business.
That's fair.
And, the first few years, you're like, at least for me, the first few years, I was checking mentions. I was looking at Twitter. And, you like to see the things that are kind about what you do, and then you see the things that are either personal attacks or like people that don't like what you do, and that kind of stings a little bit. But you better get over that quickly, because I know several people that have tried this business that leaned way too into the feedback and couldn't take the crummy things that were being said, and they're just like, I'm going to find something else to do with my life.
You and I both know Kyle Gunther. Kyle Gunther,
for sure,
who worked in this business and was very good at it for a while. He did a stand-up comedy set at Wise Guys.
Oh, nice.
Do you remember this?
I don't. No.
He did 5 minutes and was hilarious.
I could see that.
Was great.
Yeah.
That was it. Never did it again.
Huh.
To my knowledge, at least.
Just wanted to try it once.
Just tried it, and we were all working on the same station at the time, and all of us went out, and it was very funny.
I could see that from Kyle.
It was really, really funny, and then I think that it just didn't, make him famous instantly, and that's what he hoped would happen. I don't know why, but he just, didn't do it after that, as far as I know.
Well, and your point about not being able to get a laugh is an interesting thing, because if you're going to do stand-up comedy, the whole point is for somebody to laugh at what you have to say. And some of the most awkward moments I've ever experienced were being at some of those live shows in L.A. and seeing these poor kids up trying to workshop material, and people looking around like, is this real? Is he serious? Yeah. And just you could hear a pin drop. My man's up there talking about the traffic in Los Angeles, and it's not landing at all.
Do you ever watch the Kill Tony?
Yeah, for sure. I've seen Hinchcliffe several times.
The Kill Tony podcast, which is one of the most popular podcasts in the world now, is that on steroids, because they have professional comedians ridiculing you for your bad set.
Right.
That is so mean, but also hilarious.
They record that every Monday at the Comedy Store. So Tony was another one of those guys. I actually thought Tony would be bigger than he is by now, because this was 7 years ago. And I know he's not as popular for some these days as a result of whatever, but he's very witty. He is one of the biggest jerks of that whole group, though. Tony would get up, and I remember Ali Wong, who's now uber famous as well. Ali was supposed to be there for a set. This was after her Netflix special, and she was late, and Hinchcliffe took the stage and just ripped into her. I guess you could have a Netflix special. You don't have to show up at the store on time. But it was uncomfortably rude.
Just too mean?
Yes.
Took too much pleasure in it?
That's kind of who he is, though.
Yeah, that's fair.
But anyway, I was thinking about you as I was watching. I'm I bet Sean has a couple of things like this in his life.
Yeah, I'm now, James, technically we're over our show time, so you're my boss again. This conversation has motivated me to tell you I'm done. I'm going to go negotiate with every possible media outlet, and I'm going to do a wildlife show. Okay.
You can blame that on me. That's my bad.
I have no infrastructure to support me. I'm going to shoot it all on an iPhone.
You're leaving us wanting more as a sports talk radio host.
Call back to the beginning of the show today. I like what you did there.
One more thing. I want you to tell your wife that she should express herself a little bit more, because I always lean back on the Seinfeld thing when he says, every time a man sings, it's uncomfortable. If you're at a party, the guy with a guitar, nobody likes that guy. Yeah. But, I think if your wife has that in her, we should encourage her to express herself.
I agree. It is she's malleable on a lot of things, not on that.
Yeah.
Won't do it.
It's tough, man. That's a lot of vulnerability. I hear you. Anyway, random 15-minute segment there.
I grant you permission to use the 40-ish minutes we had with Mark Harlan today on your show.
Perfect. I heard a lot of it. Good job. I'm glad that he came in, and glad you were able to get it. And, yeah, we got a couple of holes. We'll probably bring some back.
Stay tuned for The Drive with Spence Checketts. That's it for the Sean O'Connell Show. ESPN 700.